Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Clean Libertarian Podcast. And today I had my good friend Ash come back on the show. We just talked about a lot of stuff. You know, Ash is one of those people I click with, I get along with. Not only do we just kind of chop it up for a little while, but also at the end, he blesses us with some more of his writing, doing big things, great things. I don't know, man. This is just a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. So without any further ado, here's Ash. All right, and I had the privilege and honor of sitting down again with our friend Ash. Ash, thanks a lot for taking the time to come back on and hang out, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you, Drew, for having me again. As always, it's an honor and a privilege.
And anytime. Here's the thing: like when I set out to do this podcast, you know, there's obviously some messages that I want to get out there, but the type of content that I most enjoy making is the type of content that I want to hear, and talking to like-minded people like yourself. That makes for the best content for me. So this is a treat. You and I were talking a little bit beforehand, and one of the things you wanted to get out of the way first off and foremost is you said you had an amends that you needed to make to the audience.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much. So, 10th step in action. The last episode we recorded together, I think it was 57, something like that. It was a few episodes back. And, my wife gave me some honest feedback and constructive criticism. I'm not in the doghouse because she does have a sense of humor, but towards the end of the episode, I made a joke about, guests of yours giving bad advice. And I said like, oh yeah, you should bang the newcomer and, all this other stuff and everything. And I just want to make sure your audience knows that I did intend that as a joke.
Right.
And I think most of your audience, a lot of people in the recovery community have like a sense of humor, and they can, I wasn't being serious about that at all. And actually, just kind of highlighting, when I was a newcomer, I was 13th stepped by, a lady. So it happens with both guys and gals. And that did damage to my recovery in a lot of ways, and also damaged relationships I had later on in recovery.
Yeah.
Because of my expectations and my ability to reflect on myself accurately and work a program and turn things over and blah, blah, blah. So that does work both ways. And again, it was intended as a joke. If somebody, was offended by that, I do apologize sincerely. So that's amends number one. Amends number two, at one point I misspoke. I had meant to say the Bill of Rights and the 12 traditions serve as a limitation on the government or the group. That's what I intended to say. I think I had said like the Constitution or something, and I think I had said something about restricting the rights of people, and that was just ass backwards and my mistake. What I had meant to say was that the Bill of Rights and the traditions serve as a restriction on the group, the government, all of that sort of stuff. And it's not a restriction on the people. It is enunciating what, certain natural rights. And of course you get into like the 10th Amendment. It says like, there's so many rights that, we can't even elaborate on them all here.
Right.
So, and that's if you're the kind of libertarian that believes in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in the first place, which, hey, that's beyond our pay grade, right?
Yes, it is.
Go on.
I was going to ask you on the newcomer thing. What if you're a newcomer? Can you bang another newcomer? Is that okay then?
I would recommend against it personally, but hey, I mean, and here's the thing about it. It's like you're already making, so the logic behind it. And first of all, that's something that comes out of treatment, because if you look at our Lord and Savior, Bill Wilson, like God knows how many illegitimate children he had. And yeah, I mean, like, so there's one piece to it there, but like, again, the stay away from the newcomers thing, that's treatment wisdom. And no one follows. It's like you said, like there was a comedian that said something to the effect of no one follows that suggestion anyway. So no one knows if it works. I would say that the rule is, or not the rule, the suggestion is go to a meeting and change everything about yourself. And so if you're already doing that, it's very difficult to, keep the focus on recovery when all of a sudden all the focus is on like someone else and this new and exciting, I mean, we're junkies. We're chasing the rush in our head, and
Oh, hell yeah.
the prospect of a new relationship, or if that's even what you want to call it, or a series of one night stands. That's something that gets the adrenaline and the dopamine and the endorphins flowing.
Yeah, I actually at one point in time used a line out of the Big Book to get laid. The part where it says, "We are not to be arbiters on anybody's sex life." That bit.
Some would have no flavor for our fare. And have us on a straight pepper diet. That's right. I have a buddy of mine. I was super jealous of him years ago. He had a shirt that just said "straight pepper diet," and like,
nice.
It wasn't attached. It didn't have any of the logos or the symbols or anything like that. It just said in plain black and white lettering, "straight pepper diet." And like when he wore that in meetings, people, that riled some people up. It was pretty damn funny.
That's
but
fantastic.
Obviously, since he had the shirt, I couldn't have the shirt, and that's always upset me. But I'll get over that resentment. I'll pray for him.
Well, you can make the hat.
Right.
That's the move. Or get the tumbler. Oh, hey, there it is. There it is. But no, man, I think that, you're right. The majority of the audience understood, that was a joke. But for those who didn't, it is a good idea to kind of like take it easy, man. Get immersed in recovery, not get immersed in, that sense of ease and comfort that you once knew. Right.
That first step, is all about, okay, I'm fucked. And that second step and that third step is believing in something and turning my life over to it. And it's very easy to believe that, some kind of romantic entanglement is going to get me out of myself. And that's going to be the hit, the buzz, the fix or whatever that's going to get me out of this current predicament. Right. And that's just not a healthy way of dealing with things. It's pretty much just switching seats on the Titanic, as they say.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Another amends. I had misquoted something and attributed it to Murray Rothbard, but it was actually Milton Friedman. And that was that idea that the failure of government versus the private sector, the failure of government being that it has no mechanism for dealing with failure. Therefore, it just expands. There's an oversight committee, another bureau, whereas in the private sector, something just goes out of business. So that was Milton Friedman. That was not Murray Rothbard. My bad. One last amends, and I owe this to you. You had said at one point something to the effect of, this is the only disease. Addiction's the only disease that convinces you don't have a disease. And I agreed with it in the moment. And then I had to think about it for a second. And I'm not sure I entirely agree. I think I have to respectfully disagree. And my reasoning behind it is that I don't think we have the patent on denial. I think I've seen plenty of examples of, somebody is on depression medication and they start to feel better, and then they stop taking their medication because they feel better. And they're like, well, I don't need this, and that's a form of denial. And then a month later, they misattribute it to something completely different. They stopped taking their medication a month ago, but it keeps working. And you see it all the time in the mental health world. I had actually discussed this with my wife, and she was like, yeah, I mean, you see people do it with their physical health too. When like they stop taking antibiotics a day or two early because, the next thing like, oh, I'm already feeling better. I don't need to keep taking these antibiotics. I'll save a few for later. And isn't that dope fiend thinking right there?
Right.
So, but yeah, those are some amends I wanted to make. And for me, it's a practice what you preach, even though I've got, over 13 years at this point. Like I still fuck up and make mistakes all the time. So like, I'm not, I want your audience to know that I'm not so full of my own freaking swamp gas that,
you can't cop to it. Well, and admittedly that, on that last bit that you're talking about, that it's the only disease that'll convince you don't have it. Like that, admittedly, is some stuff I'd heard in meetings, and it sounded catchy, and I kind of ran with it without giving a whole lot of other thought to it. But you are right. There's a plethora of other things that are out there on the market, and people are afflicted with, and we don't have the monopoly on denial. So no harm, no foul on that one, my brother.
Amen. Thank you.
at all. Well, let's get into it, man. Let's get into this thing.
Program slogans that or conventional wisdom, folk wisdom you hear around the rooms that makes sense in the moment, but guess what? When you actually put 2 and 2 together, it equals 5 or 7 or something else.
Right. I think my number one go-to, and this chaps my ass, I hate hearing it, is my worst day clean is better than my best day high. And that's a fucking lie.
So wait a minute. What you're telling me is you haven't been clean long enough.
Oh shit. That's pretty much it, man. That is pretty much it. I've had some gnarly days in recovery, man. I've had some pretty bad days. And here's the thing. It's like, we get this, especially, hanging out in recovery rooms, like you get this idea that all drug use is equated to a bad thing. But there was at least a sizable window in every addict's life where that drug didn't produce a negative effect. There wasn't a negative result. You had fun. I mean, that's how you got addicted. It was a good fucking time. And so I've seen people lose a child in recovery. I've gone through a loss of a job, loss of a relationship. I mean, life happens. It doesn't stop happening because you got a 30 days clean or a year clean or whatever else. I mean, life's going to keep on going and doing its thing, man. And I don't know. I feel, to me, that cliche sounds good for a second, but it also paints a unrealistic picture for the newcomer that it's all lollipops and orgasms on this side of a 24-hour chip.
Sunshine and rainbows. That's right. It's all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
Sandy beaches and palm trees, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And here's the thing. I mean, like, I've had some great times using. I've had some great times in recovery. I will tell you what's gotten better is my ability to have perspective on whatever situation I'm dealing with. The longer I've been in recovery, that has gotten better.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean life stops happening. And I can absolutely 100% relate to having worse days clean than days using. I understand the sentiment behind it, like where I'm in a better situation because I'm not using for sure. But that doesn't mean life doesn't suck at times. So I'm with you, brother.
I think the thing that makes it different is that it's manageable.
Yes.
I think that, my worst day clean is more manageable than my best day high. That would be the proper terminology. But anyways,
there's more manageability. And why is there more manageability? There's more manageability because I am relying on a fellowship of others. I have a spiritual solution to a spiritual problem, which is my own discontentment with the situation. Which is kind of Buddhist and funny because I'm not a Buddhist, but that's some philosophy straight out of there.
Yeah, man.
I'd say one of my least favorite cliches you hear is meeting makers make it. Man, my response to that is meeting makers make meetings. I've put myself in a situation before where I was locked up. When I was locked up, so I had those your audience that remembers, like, I had 17 months of recovery, and then I did a year in jail, and that year in jail was taught me a lot of great things about recovery. But at one point, I had broken some minor jail rule or something like that, and the punishment was to actually keep me out of meetings. I wasn't allowed to attend any, and I'm using air quotes here, outside classes, as they referred to them at that jail. And that included going to the 12-step meetings they had at the jail, which I think is messed up. That's like keeping insulin away from a diabetic in a way.
Yeah, it's fucked up, man.
Yeah, it totally is. But, I broke the rule, and, I take ownership over my behavior. Just because I disagree with something doesn't mean I shouldn't have some level of adhering to whatever it is that's going on. And so I had for 2 months was unable to go to meetings, and I ended up, I had sponsees and people I was mentoring through the 12 steps on the unit, and was able to do some stuff in-house. But the official meetings at that jail, I was unable to attend them for a couple of months. And I've had other periods where I've been unable to get to meetings. I've had sponsees that have gone long periods of time without meetings, and they still stay connected to people in the fellowship. They still stay connected to their mentor, or myself or other people. They're still of being of service. They still engage in a life of regular reflection. And that's not to co-sign people not going to meetings, but it is to say, like, yeah, meeting makers make meetings. It's not that meeting makers make it. It's about, we get it when we get it. It's like my grand sponsor, grand mentor, whatever you want to call him, said, we get it when we get it. We keep it if we're lucky, and we're willing to work for it. So
Hell yeah, man. Sitting in a meeting doesn't make you a member of recovery any more than sitting in a car or sitting in a garage makes you a car. Like there's work that goes into it. Now there is value to be found, but we don't catch this thing through osmosis. There's 12 steps on a wall. There's sponsors for a reason. Like there's a reason this program is set up in the way that it is, and other programs. I don't just want to give the monopoly on participating in your own recovery to the 12-step community.
Yep.
I think that translates across the board. Whatever avenue you're on to get clean and find some freedom, it's going to require you to do some shit,
right.
And so, yeah. I think the other one that I don't like is hang with the winners.
Stick with the winners.
Yeah, you'll hear that. You'll hear that a little bit. And I understand the sentiment. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, who the fuck are we to say who's a winner and who's a loser?
If I were to have put money on every person that I thought was going to stay clean or sober, I would be in so much debt. It's unreal.
Unreal. Cannot call them. I don't give a fuck who you are. You cannot call them, man.
Yeah. It's the God of my misunderstanding or your misunderstanding or whoever's. I mean, that's kind of how it rolls. But that's a humble opinion, of course, too. I'm sure you've got listeners that would hear that and be like, "What's this God you speak of?" Ugh.
I think they're all kind of plugged in, and I've talked about it before. That God thing can be anything you want it to be, man. It can be anything or nothing. I mean, it doesn't matter. God can be the group. God can be this fucking podcast. I don't care what it is, just something that has this thing called life figured out a little bit better than you do. Just focus on that. But yeah, dude, there's a speaker I listened to a while back, and he's like, that if you're in a meeting, you're doing good. And if you're outside the meeting, you're just fucking cold. That doesn't mean you're doing bad. You know what I mean? It's like, and he was talking in the middle of winter. That's why he said cold. But right. I mean, the point he was trying to make is that, like, the roads that we have walked, the depths of depravity all of us have seen and touched, we are in no position to label anybody a winner or a loser at all. You know what I mean?
This is true. So this is one that I don't. It's a hard one for me because I understand where you're coming from, and to some extent I do agree with you. I think that the danger, though, is when I am completely surrounded on a regular basis, day in, day out, with people that talk about problems rather than the solution.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
And that part, like, so my, there's my great grand mentor, sponsor, whatever. He died with over 50 years of continuous recovery. And one of the last things, I visited him a couple weeks before he died. He was on his deathbed. And one of the last things he told me, and a guy I was mentoring, was stay away from the sad asses.
Oh,
so I don't know. So stick with the winners versus stay away from the sad asses. Maybe there's some new. I mean, they're not the same thing,
right?
Because I think that just because somebody isn't a sad ass doesn't necessarily mean they're a winner, and we don't know who actually is a winner or who isn't. But I can tell you what I know for sure, and that is that I don't want to be around people that are just an Eeyore in recovery. It drives me crazy. Somebody wants to complain about a problem for 24 hours, 48 hours, something like that. Cool,
Yeah.
whatever. But afterwards, got to get solution focused. Brings up a good point, by the way. So, I recently I've had to stop listening to a lot of the podcasts that I listen to because it started messing with my depression, and I was starting to feel really black pilled. You
Yep.
know, listening to a lot of the shit. Like, I already don't watch the news, mainstream media, on a regular basis anyways, just because it's so damn depressing, and it's designed to promote like fear and anxiety and all this other stuff. But I mean, I had to stop listening to Part of the Problem. I had to stop listening to, For Canon's Sake. I have literally been listening to, a handful of podcasts that are lighter toned. Yours is one of them, and a couple other like libertarian things, that just something that's lighter, something that's less like, the world is falling apart around us. Like, and it's okay to
Right.
like acknowledge and accept that and want to do something about it and be principled about it and everything like that. But I just, anyways.
No, I mean, I'm right there with you, dude. Like, there's a lot. You're not on Twitter, so I had the unique experience of seeing that shit really compacted down and like amplified. That black pill mentality. Just the whole world's falling apart.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wonderful people that I follow and I appreciate them, but man, there's a lot of them that are just so goddamn miserable anymore. It's like, I get it. I mean, things do suck, but man, this isn't the way we were supposed to live. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we got to acknowledge some of the positive shit that's happening in this world, because
Amen.
there is positive shit happening.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of it, man.
I am glad I am living in the century that I am in, as opposed to several hundred years ago.
Jesus Christ, man, cats
Yeah.
like you and me would have been hooked up to a fucking, shock therapy treatments,
Oh yeah.
just a handful of decades ago,
I
you
believe the
know?
last lobotomy they performed in the United States was in 1967, and if you watch the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Uh-huh.
I mean, yeah, he slept with an underage girl and everything like that, but Jack Nicholson's character was an alcoholic, and they gave him a lobotomy. That's what they used to do to alcoholics and drug addicts that didn't turn their shit around.
Let me tell you, they're still doing that. It's just chemical. It's not, with lithium. And when I had my last slip, man, like, one of the places I wound up is in one of them wound up facilities, and I can't tell you the name of this medication they had me on, but dude, I was a fucking zombie.
Right.
And they expected me to, like, that's just who you are now. That's how you have to function. I'm like, I can't do this, man. There ain't no fucking way. But anyway, I didn't mean to step on where you're going with that.
No. It's good. And what I would say, I'm glad that you're doing much better now and you're able to get off of the medication. Funny enough, in doing research for the book I'm writing, I discovered the Soviet Union actually gave up lobotomies in the 1950s because they considered it inhumane.
So you mean to
That's
tell
a
me the
laughing
Soviet
Yeah.
Union was more progressive?
The Soviet Union was more progressive than the Allies were, than the free world was
That is
on
interesting.
lobotomies. Now, that being said, up until the late 80s, they would inject sulfa into people's bodies to have an allergic reaction and aversion to, while they were detoxing them off of alcohol, because alcohol was a huge problem. And I think you and I have had a conversation or two about like the first people to bring AA behind the Iron Curtain, Gorbachev's glasnost and perestroika period, where people from 12-step fellowships in California were allowed to fly out to Moscow. And I can't imagine what those first recovery meetings were like. And for the audience, you can Google this. Google, Alcoholics Anonymous in the USSR, and there's some articles that are written about that, some archive stuff. So you brought up Twitter, and actually, this is a good thing to have a conversation about. That's more libertarian oriented than recovery oriented. Jack Dorsey tweeting out links to Anatomy of the State by Rothbard. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not gonna deify the man. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm not going to turn him into a savior of the libertarian community because he's Jack Dorsey. He has been the author of deplatforming and silencing voices. I've seen how COVID, you can't type vaccine in a tweet without it having a notification pop up,
Right.
That being said, I think it's pretty cool that we saw, Murray Rothbard trending for a little bit. There's a lot of eyes that saw that. And if you're going to post like a red pill book, Anatomy of the State is one of the better ones you could possibly come up with.
Yeah. Yep. And
what about you?
There's an audio. So my thing is that if I ever am coming, if I'm ever if I'm ever getting ready to 12 step somebody into the liberty movement or to be freedom minded, Anatomy of the State, the audio book is actually available on Spotify. And that's one of the first links I'll give to them. It's like, oh, you could just play it on the car on the way home from work or, school or whatever it happens to be, a meeting, just, listen, hear it out, see what you think. If you have questions, feel free to ask me. But that's one of the ones that'll turn people on to. Something I do think about though, like I wonder if Dorsey's about to go all McAfee or whatever, like, him versus the former antivirus software. Maybe he's about to get separated from the company, hostile takeover or something like that.
Could be.
Yeah. So that's something. But anyways, I thought it was interesting. And I don't know how much of. So that brings up actually another point as well. So Twitter, Facebook, a lot of these big tech companies, acting basically as public utilities rather than free enterprise at this point. And I wonder how much of what it is they're doing in censoring or whatever is at the request, and I say that with quotes, of the state. So,
that's solid point there. Or, if it's kind of damage control beforehand, before the X, Y, or Z or the men in suits, come and say, hey, what the fuck are you guys? Why are you allowing this on your platform? Shit like that. I won't pretend to understand how that works at the very top. I don't know, man. I know. Here's the thing too. Jack is a real big crypto guy, and so I'm inclined to believe that he posted that because he also tweeted out the hashtag what happened in 1971. And so I think he's alluding more to the economic side of it rather than the liberty side. I think that's kind of like his big rub. Mm-hmm. Jack seems absolutely the type of personality who could disregard anything and everything about the morality of government and or liberty, the finer points, and just hone in on that one individual section of the conversation. Maybe I'm wrong though.
Yeah. Something else that happened in 1971, you and I were talking about it. 1971, I think it's June. So we just passed the 50-year anniversary of the beginning of the war on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something else that happened in 1971. So not only are we talking about bad economic policy for stretching way beyond 50 years, but like, 1971's kind of, that's the part he brings up. But another thing that happened in 71 was that was the beginning of the war on drugs, which spread from the United States to pretty much every country on the planet. And I think probably the most dramatic thing that I see is, President of the Philippines talking about how he wants to be, a personal Hitler for drug addicts, which is fucking insane to me how people can get away with saying stuff like that in the 21st century. But what the hell do I know? We're busy talking about vaccine passports and all this other shit. So I'm waiting for the day when recovery clubhouses say you're not allowed in here unless you scan your passport at the door or something.
Here's the thing is that the recovery community is such a melting pot of all different walks of life that there's a healthy amount of those who just go home and tune into CNN and all of that. And, that's what they believe. But with a little bit of critical thinking, it's like, I don't see how anybody in any of these meetings, or at least that shows up and participates in the group conscience, could sit there and allow not even vaccine passports, just allow the meeting to shut down again and move to Zoom.
Yeah.
After what we've seen, but I don't know, man. I hope it doesn't.
I have enough faith that there's enough anti-authoritarian types in the recovery community that they're going to be like, yeah, we're definitely not putting up with this shit. I mean, the reality is if we were more organized and could actually start meetings on time and stuff like that, who knows? We might even take over like a small country or something. I mean, like,
let's get it.
Recovery-istan or something.
Fuck yeah. Hell yeah, man.
We should secede and start recovery-istan somewhere in, I don't know, the Southwest United States or something. Take over Death Valley, like some patch of land no one cares about, and just slowly but surely, incrementally expand it. And it's,
Yeah, absolutely.
For the NSA and CIA that's listening, this is for legal reasons, obviously a joke.
We're talking in Minecraft. We're talking about in Minecraft. Yeah.
In Minecraft. There you go.
I think for me, like my goal is however the community rolls with it. If they decide to roll over and allow meetings to shut down again, I'm going to make it my personal responsibility to find out every single back alley meeting that's occurring, put it on a list and take it to the local detoxes. So at least those guys and gals leaving have a list of available in-person meetings. I dropped the ball on that, in 2020, and that's not cool. I need to step up to the plate a little bit more than that. But
so you bring up these back alley speakeasy meetings. I'm going to go ahead and I would like to talk about something that occurred a couple of weeks ago that was actually rather inspiring. So one of the meetings I attend that actually started up a mask mandate again. And my mentor through the 12 steps actually said, screw that. We're going back to the speakeasy, back alley, illegal meeting format. And so it was me and it was a few other people, and it was a smaller, more intimate meeting. And I'm always a fan of that. I prefer small groups of people or whatever. But it was just amazing at the meeting after the meeting how like-minded everyone was. Everyone's talking about economic stuff like hyperinflation and what they're worried about, and what is it our kids are being taught in these public schools right now. And I'm getting ready. So for you and your listeners and everything like that, you're here first. Myself and Mrs. Ash, we are expecting a baby boy in December.
Right on, man. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's truly a gift from God and a blessing of being able to maintain and sustain recovery and all of that sort of stuff. So we're having conversations about the future and concern. It's amazing how many people in recovery get concerned for their family and what do I do? And as there's the I'm not going to say it's the misconception. Because there are definitely women out there who are the breadwinners in families. But in a men's meeting, it's like, okay, yeah, how do I maintain being a breadwinner when the entire economy is going down the toilet?
Yeah.
And I had actually linked to some good podcasts that I was not listening to at the time because I'm feeling all black-pilled and depressed and shit, but I'm still like, yeah, you check these guys out and check out Anatomy of the State and check this and check that and da-da-da-da. And these guys are like eating this stuff up and they're like, oh, this is great. And we start talking about, cryptocurrency, and we start talking about gold and silver. My wife's engagement ring came from a bunch of gold and silver I had stashed because as a libertarian and a person in recovery, and I think I talked about this the last episode we recorded or whatever, there was a lot of doomsday prepping inspired stuff for me in early recovery that led me down this road, and part of it is being prepared for any sort of thing. I'm not necessarily going to suggest to your audience that they stock up on canned goods and water and stuff like that, but I'm not going to not suggest that either. I mean, like, but that might be a good use of the fiat currency that may rapidly devalue.
Yeah.
Conversations we had after the meeting, we were talking about how, like, between World War I and World War II, you had people with wheelbarrows full of cash, using that to try to buy a loaf of bread. And it's funny because that loaf of bread, so like part of what I talk about with people is this idea of like, okay, well, if you treat the goods you have as a currency for a second here, that loaf of bread still feeds the same number of people, whether the cost is $1 or $10 or $100, it still feeds the same number of people. So what you should stock up on is goods like that are actually going to be shelf stable and last for a while. You can only stock up on so much of that, and you can only do so much of it with a budget or whatever, but like, that's one of those things to potentially look at. I know my wife and I, like, I got lucky and, stumbled into multiple crates of MREs at one point, and it's just sitting there waiting for a rainy day.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that for people. But it was interesting how conversations like that come up at the end of meetings, like-minded people also talking about liberty, recovery, economics, that kind of stuff. And it was inspiring. It was inspiring because, you know what, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're new to recovery, maybe you found it through Zoom, whatever. If you look at your local area, there's a chance that there might actually be some in-person meetings around, and there might be some people that are just kind of fed up with a lot of this stuff. Because I can't speak for anyone else, but I will say something that I think I said in the last episode. Between COVID and my disease of addiction, is going to 100% kill me faster than that virus.
Any given day, given fucking day, that's not even comparable.
Absolutely.
Not even comparable, man. And yeah, you are correct. I think that especially and I know we're all kind of, I mean, forgive us all for being on the edge of our seats with mandates and policies, but I mean, given the year we had fucking last year, it's not out of the question to be in this mentality. But I think given with how everything was handled last year, if it tries to have a sequel, if they start trying to push more mandates, more closures, more lockdowns, I think you're really going to start to see more of these meetings like you talked about, like opening up here and there, which is a good thing. That's punk rock. That's how we started. God damn it. Right. NA started, NAAA, all the A's started out of necessity because we didn't have anywhere else to go. So, I mean, hell, we've been down this road before, You
said it best, and this is how you and I met, was I had asked you if I could use a quote for the book, which is that the state, the court system sending people to recovery meetings was an admission of failure of the state. There's nothing we can do about this to help you recover, but these people seem to have a solution. And this solution is a community-based, mutual and voluntary exchange of ideas, experience, strength, hope, and service, charity. And that's something that is not forced at gunpoint. It's something that's completely consensual. We were talking earlier about things in the slogans and things in the recovery community that irritate us. The number one of the big things that irritates the hell out of me is when somebody is referred from the court system and they seem to think that the recovery meeting they're in is associated with the courts. And it's like, no, this is not part of the court system. Like, sure, we'll sign your fucking slip or whatever, but like, we're not, I'm not your fucking probation officer, dude.
No, dude.
Like, yeah.
Not going to happen,
Yeah.
There's meetings around here locally that they will not sign papers. The chair will not sign papers. And they're not saying that if you're court ordered, you can't come here. They're just saying that, like, we don't want to involve ourselves. And I respect it. Now, if I go to one of those meetings and there's somebody that needs their paper signed, I'm going to fucking sign it in the parking lot, just because that's my own personal thing. I'll do it. But I can respect that, and it does get a little carried away. I have heard about certain probation officers going through the phone number list and calling people, was such and such there this evening? Did you actually see them there? How did they get this paper signed? And I don't know, man. Anonymity is a central focus of this program, and yet it seems like we kind of get that pulled away from us whenever we have to, not have to, but whenever we choose to work with, the state on this. And I don't think it's even working with the state. It's working with the individual, so that way they can work with the state. But you get what I'm saying, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people don't really even know about this, but I mean, Bill Wilson, and I refer to him a lot because he is like the one public figure in the 12-step community that everyone can kind of point to. And it's like, well,
right.
He never got any anonymity, and that was something that probably contributed to his depression later in life. But I mean, he stood up in front of like Senate, subcommittees and like testified, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook style in front of these people, talking about how recovery was possible. And there was a lot of movement up until the war on drugs came about. About recovery is possible. We're out here. There's treatment for alcoholism and everything like that. And the exact same time that was all going on in the public sphere, the war on drugs kicked off, and none of the drunks wanted to be associated with, that. And that's an unfortunate piece of history, because that's something that really, recovery is recovery, and a drug is a drug is a drug. Hell, even a behavior is a drug at this point. Weren't we just talking about 13th stepping at the beginning of
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, that's well, here's the thing is that we learn within the relatively short time of being involved, you learn that the substances were just what am I trying to say? Symptom. Thank you. They were a symptom of the problem, not the problem itself. The problem is all that other shit. The problem is all that stuff we start writing down on paper in 4, and to really take a look at it in 6 and 7. That's the issue. That's the problem that I have. And so, yeah, it's not the substance, but the unfortunate piece of history, like you said, with with AA and all that, it still lingers on in some parts of the country. But fuck, dude, NA is just as bad. You go into an NA meeting, certain places say clean and sober, and you'll get your ass handed to you. It's just part of the deal.
Oh, you mean their status in the meeting that charge you with wrong think and wrong speak?
Yeah. I know you've seen it, man.
Oh,
I know you've seen it.
That's a funny thing too, is like if you go into the recovery community, it's a microcosm of the rest of the world, and you see all the same personality types. You got the crusty old timers that are, some of them are super left leaning, some of them are super right leaning, and you see the same kinds of people get into the same fights. And it's funny because when the meeting's going on, like for the most part, everyone is like by and large trying to help the newcomer. Like that's the positive, like, pardon my verbiage here, but white pill takeaway is this idea of like, this is a fellowship that's based on benign anarchy. It's designed to like bring the newcomer into the fold and help people get off booze and drugs so we can, help them save their lives and turn shit around, and then they can pay it forward and to the next, sad asshole that comes around the rooms. But that being said, of course, you do have situations where, some people are sicker than others. And the question I ask myself on a day-to-day basis is, do I want to be some, or do I want to be others? There's one more thing that rankles my ass, and I'm going to go ahead and say it here, and this will be in the book as well. And then if you want, we can segue into, I can read a section of some stuff I've got going on that's a rough draft. But have you ever noticed how, so let me ask you something. What are the symptoms of a common cold?
Stuffy nose, lightheadedness, little cough.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a virus. It's a disease. It's, it's chronic, progressive, potentially fatal, right? It fits into the medical. Maybe it's not potentially fatal. I guess it depends on how immunocompromised you are. I'm sure. I mean, no shortage of people throughout human history have died of the common cold.
Right.
But But realistically, we're at a place in medical advancement where it's not really such an issue. But the fact is, you recognize the symptoms of it. So why is it when people come in for drug or alcohol treatment, the counselors, the clinicians, the doctors do not tell them what the actual symptomology of a substance use disorder is? It's interesting because, like, so I end up having, being in the field, I end up having, these conversations with people about what is what are the actual symptoms for substance use disorder. And there's some debate on it and everything like that. The two ones that have stood the test of time, the two physical symptoms are tolerance and withdrawal. Those are the two physical symptoms of a substance use disorder. But then there's other stuff that, goes into it too, like taking the substance in larger amounts for longer than you're meant to, or wanting to cut down or stop using the substance, but not being able to do so. Like, those are actual clinical symptoms of this disease, if we're going to call it a disease, and we're going to follow the medical model and all this sort of stuff. And two of them are physical. The other 9 of them are cognitive and behavioral. Using substances again and again, even when it puts us in danger, continuing to use even when it causes problems in relationships, continuing to use even when we know we have a physical or psychological problem that could have been caused or made worse by the substance. Giving up important social, occupational, recreational activities, so on and so forth. And we don't discuss this as a society. Like, as a person in recovery, like, whether the schools are public or private, I kind of feel that that's something we should talk to people about, especially if we talk about a disease that potentially affects 1 in 7 people in this country.
Right.
Goes undiagnosed. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's another thing that really just kind of upsets me, and throw that out there.
Yeah, they got the questions, and that's just kind of one of those things. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it though, but they got the little questionnaires.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think AA's got, what is it, like 40 questions or something like that? Like
10 questions, or it's some questions.
Some IP of some sort or another. NA has much the same.
So the bastard love child of, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, the bastard love child of AA and NA is actually Marijuana Anonymous, and their fellowship and their book Life with Hope was written by a bunch of like stoners with PhDs, probably a lot book smarter than I am, but they've got their own version of the 10 questions or 12 questions or whatever it is. And if you happen to live in an area where they have a Marijuana Anonymous meeting, you should totally check it out, because it's pretty. Their literature is actually amazing. It really is. But, they have a set of 10 questions or 12 questions that they talk about in the beginning of some of their meetings. And they've got a bunch of funny responses to them. It's like, does your use of marijuana let you live in a privately defined world? And like, all these people in the world will be, all the people in the room will be like, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Halo, like all this other shit, like all this like obvious like stoner crap going on. But so it's pretty cool. So I mean, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about? Were you interested in me reading a section of
yeah, let's go into that. I wanted to cover that because you are, what'd you say, 40 pages in?
Give or take. Yeah. I mean, I've got some sections that I'm rewriting. Lately I've been focusing on editing some stuff that I'm rewriting certain parts of it just because I want to really nail down what it is I'm trying to get across. So I've got a section here where I'm actually covering the 12 steps from the perspective of both liberty and recovery. So I'm going to read step 1. This is a rough draft, and I'm going to I'm going to read it, and this is not the final version. Again, full disclaimer, not the final version. I do not have the permission of AA World Services as this stands right now to publish this the way it is. And by the way, for anyone that's curious, AA World Services actually does own the copyright to the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. So other fellowships like Narcotics Anonymous, Al-Anon, Marijuana Anonymous, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, they all actually license the 12 steps and the 12 traditions from Alcoholics Anonymous World Services. So anyone that wants to use it for anything other than a meeting, they actually have to ask for permission. I am still waiting on that permission for some sections of my book because, but anyways, so this is about, the first step. This is the most important step as it serves as a foundation for the other 11 steps. It's easiest for me to explain certain concepts by interspersing my personal experience and observations in recovery. I'll switch back and forth between how this applies to individual liberties and getting off booze and drugs. If you found this book and you're struggling to get off booze and or other drugs, take care of that prior to worrying about authoritarianism versus libertarianism and how you can help. If this supports your recovery, great. If this supports your quest for liberty, great. If it supports neither, there's no refunds. I got to throw in my little jab there.
Hell yeah.
Having made that disclaimer, admitting to the first step is a sad truth for the rebellious in spirit. A lot of people get hung up on powerlessness. It sucks to admit losing control over anything, and many people with lengthy periods of recovery will also comment on how much it sucks to lose control in other ways as well. To act out in compulsion, seemingly against our will. It sucks watching people we love hurt themselves or die, knowing full well there's nothing we can do. Or we may even try to act knowing full well it's futile to control the actions of others. My experience is that once I start using, I can't stop. If I do stop, or I am stopped, usually because of handcuffs, my obsession of the mind, true powerlessness, takes over. In the same way we figured out that we had no power over our obsessive consumption of alcohol, other drugs, codependent relationships, and other maladaptive behaviors and thinking patterns, we find ourselves as individuals powerless over what the state does. For those who have not yet accepted this reality, it may be easier to discuss what each of us as individuals does have control over, our attitudes and our actions. While property rights and non-aggression might mean the most to the most people in the liberty space, the mere declaration of that sadly won't inhibit infringements. This is part of a larger argument that separates ANCAPs from MINCAPs, anarcho-capitalists from minarchists. The belief that documents like the Bill of Rights are just a piece of paper and not an actual restraint on government. I don't want to debate this in this book, as I'd rather focus on unifying the liberty space. To the anarchists reading this, just as Lenin said, the goal of socialism is communism, perhaps this might be appropriate to say. The goal of minarchy is anarchy. This isn't to diminish the philosophies of anarchy, minarchy, or even classical liberalism so much as to serve as a rallying cry for the liberty-minded. Think of it as our own version of intersectionality, but with freedom of association, as leaving is always an option. Many anarchists I've spoken with and listened to would say that privatizing the sidewalk and getting rid of driver's licensing is pretty low on their priority list given the state of things. Just as we couldn't control our use of alcohol and drugs, there is no button to disappear or reduce the state instantly, not one that relies on non-aggression anyway. For those on the other end of the liberty spectrum, it may be good to look at what failings the history of the United States eventually led us toward a less perfect union and ameliorate those wrongs. Milton Friedman once said, the problem with government is not in the things it tries, but in the absence of any mechanism for recognizing error. Ask yourself how many government agencies you can think of that have ever been abolished. You can count those on the fingers of one hand. Indeed, they expand like cancer in the light of failure. Each one of those bureaus exerts infringement on individual liberty, and there must be distinction between levels of quote-unquote tolerable infringement, since incrementalism is our only realistic recourse shy of an act of God. We have overlap, and while it's funny to say the difference between a libertarian and an anarchist is 6 months, some people take that way too seriously, and it's not helping further the cause of individual liberties. My favorite definition of unmanageability is when the shit is hitting the fan faster than I can pick up the pieces. Yes. I really want you to savor that image. In terms of my external unmanageability, the substance use and mental health challenges led to arrests, broken relationships with family, friends, employers, educators, and lost opportunities. Most people can readily identify external consequences of substance use or even with legal substances. The news sensationalizes it, the media and musicians glorify it, society cosigns and enable it at best and lays apathetic eyes to it at worst. The state uses this mass tragedy as a soapbox to further perpetuate their own failed policies and the players' private interests. This exploitation is the nature of the cathedral. Where there is tragedy, they'll be there exploiting it and consolidating their power. I'd like to acknowledge a few things about encountering the most direct example of the state's monopoly on force. Just because people shouldn't be arrested for drug related crimes does not, in fact, mean that they don't have a substance problem. This is a common trap for people trying to rationalize or justify why they shouldn't have to stop using. That line of thinking will lead one deeper into the slavery of the disease and subsequently the state as well. If you're dependent on booze or drugs, you're exploitable. If the state isn't exploiting you directly, they're exploiting the ones that are exploiting you. There's a good chance that you will be added to the pile of bodies that make up roughly 80% of the incarcerated population. It's estimated that 4/5 of incarcerated people have a drug or alcohol problem, although not all of them have a drug or alcohol related charge. If someone hurts others, steals property, or otherwise aggresses or infringes on the rights or property of others, they should be arrested. Private policing is often a topic of conversation regarding Ancapistan, so the libertarian perspective becomes one of how socialist do you want the system to be? For me, early on, a huge motivator to get sober was to get out of this fucked up system and stay out of it. Casual drinkers and drug users need not apply, but are you a casual? This book can help you to find out. There are countless books, resources, groups, professionals to help you get the help you need and information you need. If this one doesn't work out for you, take what you need and leave the rest behind. You're sure to find your flavor if you're even relatively serious about recovering from this disease and willing to put in the work. So again, this is an edit, but I'm going to go ahead and read the last few paragraphs here.
All right.
So if this doesn't quite make sense, it's because I'm still in the middle of editing it. That's why I gave like 20 million disclaimers at the beginning. But internal unmanageability involved self-loathing and hating the mirror, existential dread, paranoia, waking up cursing a God I didn't yet believe in that I had woken up in the first place, day after day. The cognitive dissonance between the preceding discontent and the glory days of my ideal use, that I was living my best self, just partying and having fun and dealing drugs to fund it all, only ever grew. It never diminished. The growth of that internal discontent, coupled with many external consequences, reached a tipping point, leading me to want to get sober. In much the same way, with regards to the state, a possible general evolution might start as a perceived Stockholm syndrome or trauma bonding with the captor, the state, the cathedral, whatever, to a single or multiple coercive encounters with the state that are unreconcilable, leading to feelings of fear, the recognition of being exploited, disillusionment, bewilderment, betrayal ad infinitum. Whether the bureaucrats are so dumb as to gum up the works, or the state is an omniscient octopus maliciously sliding its tentacles everywhere, the end result of tolerating it in our lives has to become an affront to our soul and or the human spirit. We need freedom. Forgive the analogy, but whether you came to this book via liberty, recovery, both, or neither, being red-pilled does not have to lead to being a black pill. It can be a white pill. There is hope. Powerlessness is not helplessness. While the loss of control over people, places, things, institutions, and situations is half the equation in this step, there are two things that we have power over. Again, our attitudes and our actions. This is part of the edit that I've got to redo. I can promise you this. If I have a bad attitude and I'm doing bad things, I'm going to get a bad result. If I have a positive attitude, I'm trying to do positive things, I stand a much better chance of things turning out positive. And even if they don't, with the principles of recovery, I can transform a negative experience from a weapon my mind uses against me to a tool I can use to help and serve others. The other 11 steps can show you how to do this. If you intend to use this book beyond an exercise in academics and for personal growth instead, I would suggest working through this with a guide, mentor, or sponsor with a working knowledge of the 12-step programs and the fundamentals of libertarianism. The main principles of the first step are honesty, surrender, and acceptance. An honest appraisal of the government's overbearing infringements in our lives is necessary. Surrendering to that reality is not the same as surrendering to an enemy. It should be a wake-up call to disposing of frivolous efforts and demanding specific outcomes. The point of libertarianism or libertarian philosophy isn't to win elections. And this is what separates individual liberty or anarchy as a philosophy for life or a spiritual philosophy from a political party. Please don't misunderstand me. I hope to God we win major elections for major positions all across the country and turn those major positions into minor ones, including POTUS. However, our true victories are founded in principles and helping others to realize they believe in these principles already as well. These principles are spiritual in nature. Lastly, we focus on the acceptance found in this step. My favorite definition of acceptance is giving up all hope of a better past. We learn from it so as to not be doomed to repeat it. I hope this definition finds you well. So we take this first step with a mindful nature. Some take it a day at a time, for some an hour at a time. Still others have to go moment by moment with every fiber of their being doing everything they can to not scream into the maddening, nihilistic depths of it all. Thank you for letting me read.
Good shit, man. I really enjoy that. That is, yeah, like, we had talked about, like, this is something I've wanted to see get done for a while. And like the idea that I had in my head was so much less than what you're actually putting pen to paper on. So this is going to be all encompassing. And here's the thing it's like you're giving a crash course throughout it, both into like the nuance of recovery, but also the nuance of like, what is freedom-based liberty philosophy? Like, what does that look like? You're breaking down monarchy, you're breaking down anarchy, you're breaking down all these other things. Like, this is a really cool concept, and I enjoy where you're going with this, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have you had an opportunity to get this out to some people, like in your immediate recovery circle, to kind of look at?
Absolutely, I have. And I've actually handed this to a total stranger who was not in any way associated with recovery whatsoever, but they're from the Mises Caucus or Mises Caucus or however the hell you pronounce his name. And he looked at it and not this particular section, and he's not familiar with recovery at all, but he was like, damn, dude, just reading this, you are getting me fired up to like go out there and like change the world and like do so for the better and like, help people find actual liberty in their lifetime. And you and I had a private conversation about it, and you said it best, and I absolutely love this, and I will credit you, for credit where it's due. The recovery community gave me freedom from active addiction, and I loved freedom so much that I started looking for other ways to chase that in my lifetime. So like living as a libertarian and living in the philosophy of liberty, that's not specific to a political party. It's not specific to any of that. And I'm not one of those people that believes you shouldn't go out there and vote or anything like that. I do believe in voting, even if it doesn't do anything, even if you are participating in a monopoly on violence in a way, like the fact is the monopoly is still there. So like, this is a way to say like, hey, you're registering your like discontent with the current system at large and like trying to do something to bring about change to it. So you can hopefully slow the roll of the gears grinding and that sort of thing. And I really do believe that freedom from this eventually leads to freedom for a lot of other people in a lot of different areas in their life. And I'm hoping that this book helps people realize that, because I had to, and I had to get out of that trap of like, okay, so I'm only allowed to be this free. I'm only allowed to be this free. I'm only allowed to be, and so on and so forth. And it's like, there's so much more of the human experience and the human condition than like what other people let me do or not do through a monopoly on force. Like like the society we live in is not the society that we want for our kids. Like
Right.
and I have to try to do the best that I can for this, and maybe it'll amount to nothing, but I mean, there's a fucking pandemic on, and I got tons of free time because whatever. So I'm gonna write one book in the 10 trillion books out there that have been written, and hopefully the topic is novel enough that people actually care about it, and more important than anything else. And there's a reason I'm using pseudonyms and everything like that. It's like I don't care about the fame or any of that sort of stuff. I'm more interested in the fact that this actually gets out there and like helps people and whatever. And if I can make some income in the background from it, fantastic, whatever. But like the big thing is that I'm more interested in this getting out there and helping people and spreading the message or whatever.
Absolutely, man.
So, but thank you so much for having me on again. I actually like being, I don't know how many recurring guests you've had.
I haven't had many, but you're going to be on another one soon. I'll shoot you the link. We'll get you back on here. I like doing these types of talks. Like I said, I have a lot of really cool guests coming up. And I try to kind of keep it in between like drug policy activists, people in recovery, all of that. And I like these types of conversations too, because these keep me centered,
You get to focus on the liberty and you get to focus on the recovery.
Yeah, man. I get to kind of like, use some of that crazy ass autism that goes rattling around in my fucking head 24/7, whenever we get to talk. That's nice. It makes me feel happy. But anyway, so man, keep doing what you're doing. Fucking awesome stuff, man. Like this is going to take off. I really do think that it will, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Anytime. Is there anything you want to plug before we get on out of here?
Yeah. I would like to plug your local recovery and liberty communities. You should go out and Google that shit and get involved with those people and try to do the next right thing. And when you don't know what that is, you should ask someone and probably try to do the next thing right, whether that is furthering recovery or that is furthering liberty. Because the liberty community is on fire because we are living in a dystopia, and the recovery community is on fire, but not in a good way. It's because we have been locked out of our recovery spaces for a while. So the recovery community, this is my Uncle Sam speech. The recovery community needs you. Okay. And I'm sticking my finger in your chest. Go out there, stay sober or clean or whatever, word you want to use, and find some other people out there and go help them out. And, you stay safe. And, if no one told you they love you today, I do. So thank you very much for having me on board.
Right on, brother. Well, you have a good one, Ash.
All right. Thank you. Take care, brother. Bye.
All right, there you have it, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and especially thank you to Ash for coming back on the show. Guys, be on the lookout, because when this book drops, it's going to be a lot of knowledge he's going to lay on a lot of people. I'm excited about what that's going to look like. I'm one of the lucky ones because I get frequent updates. He'll email me little samples here and there, so I kind of get a behind-the-scenes look at it. And I'm excited, and I know that you will be too whenever it comes out. So, yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. And I'm just going to go ahead and segue. I started out, here's the thing. So I started out the new job, getting used to having this new schedule. It's wonderful, man. I'm actually working in the rehabilitation industry. I'm actually able to work with people who are getting clean and sober, and it's a beautiful thing. But I'm also having to learn how to communicate, right? I can't talk shit like I've been talking shit on the construction site. So this has been kind of a new endeavor for me, but I'm getting the hang of it a bit. So I'm also going to probably be changing up what days I release content on. That will remain to be seen. I'm pretty much going to be working on weekends, and as you know, that's when I've been dropping my episodes. So that might be changing, but I will be sure to let you guys know. But in the meantime, with all the uncertainty that I just laid on you, here is one thing that is for certain. The song of the day is Kick-Ass. This is by a band called The Bronx, and the song is called Heart Attack American. And this is just great music. Kick-ass punk tune. Hopefully it finds you well, and I hope you enjoy it. And with that, here is Heart Attack American by The Bronx.